Welcome to the First Hebrew Primer, Chapter 24. Let's take a look at the vocabulary for this week. We are in another derived stem or another verb pattern that we're going to learn this week. So we have a lot of verbs that we want to learn another definition of in this new verbal pattern. So let's jump to the upper right. We have the verb chazak in the hifil stem. So that's the one we're going to be working on this week. Means to grasp or strengthen. Below that, we have the word lavash, which in the kal stem or the pa'al stem means to put on or to wear. In the hifil, it means to cause to wear or to clothe. The verb malak in the kal stem, the regular stem, means to rule or reign. In the hifil, it means to cause to rule or reign. The verb below that, avar, in the kal stem or the pa'al stem means to cross over or pass over. In the hifil stem, it means to transfer, to cause to go over. Mavet, the noun, means death. And then at the very bottom, we have the noun Shabbat, which is the word Sabbath, which is really just a transliteration there of the Hebrew. In the upper left, we have the verb, as you know, in the kal stem, amad means to stand. In the hifil, it means to cause to stand or to erect, to set up. There's the verb shalach. In the hifil stem means to throw. The verb shama, as you know, means to hear in the kal stem or the pa'al stem. In the hifil stem, it means to announce, right? To cause someone to hear. It means to announce. Then we have the word acher, which is another or other. And then the interrogative pronoun lama means why. And then the bottom left, the word mispar, means number or amount. All right, so we are still talking about verbal patterns or verbal stems or binyanim. And there are, as we mentioned in our video last week, there are 7 verb patterns in Hebrew. Most Hebrew verbs are going to appear in more than one of those 7 verb patterns. And the 7 verb patterns are, as you can see here, the kal, the nifal, the hifil, the hofel, the pl, the pu'al, and the hitpa'el. If you want to know how those names got created, you can watch last week's video where I described that in a little bit more detail. This week we are looking at the hifil, which if you look at our XY axis chart here that we've been interacting with, these verbal stems or verb patterns indicate verbal voice, right? Active, passive, or reflexive. We've looked at the kal or the pa'al stem. Last week we looked at the pl stem, which is all the way on the right hand side, active voice. This week we're looking at the other active voice conjugation, that is the hifil stem or the causative stem active voice. Now Hebrew definitely prefers the active voice to the passive, so there are the vast majority of verbs are going to be either the kal, the pl, or the hifil, far, far more than the hofel, pu'ol, or nifal. All right, as we look at the hifil pattern, when a root appears in the kal stem or the pa'al pattern, it usually has that simple active meaning. But when the same root appears in the hifil pattern, it usually has a causative meaning. Although, as always, if you don't know the meaning of a verb and it's in the hifil stem, you always want to look it up in the lexicon under the hifil stem entry. Here's some examples of the meaning of verbs in the kal versus the hifil. So let's take a look at that top one, bo, which means to come in the kal stem. In the hifil, it means to cause to come or to bring. Below that, we have the word yada, to know. In the kal stem, it means to know. In the hifil stem, it means to cause to know or to announce something. Below that, we have the verb yalad, which means to give birth to. In the hifil, it means to cause to give birth to. One of these verbs obviously is typically used of the mother, one is typically used of the father. Below that, we have the verb yatsa, which is, in the kal stem means to go out or go forth. In the hifil stem means to bring out or to cause to go forth. Below that, we have the verb yarad, which means to go down or descend. In the hifil, it means to cause to go down or to lower. The second to last, we have kum. That verb in the kal stem means to get up. In the hifil, it means to establish or to cause to arise. And then finally, the word shuv means to return. In the kal stem, it means to cause to return or bring back in the hifil. And I think one of the things you can see here is that because we don't have verbal stems in English, we typically have other vocabulary words that we use to communicate the causative idea, or we use an auxiliary verb like cause to communicate that idea. And so that's one of the just differences between Hebrew and English. Okay, let's take a look at the diagnostics of the Hifil stem. The most important diagnostic is the he prefix that's added to every form of the conjugation, although sometimes it's hidden, but it is there. In the perfect, imperative, and infinitive construct, and the infinitive absolute, so that's, your textbook calls that the regular infinitive and the infinitive of emphasis, the Hifil stem prefix is there. It's that he prefix in all those forms. In the imperfect and the participle, the he prefix has elided. It's there hiding underneath the prefix of the imperfect, or the signal letter of the imperfect, or the prefix of the participle. And then finally, the stem vowel of the Hifil is normally a hirkyod or a tzere, that an I-class vowel. All right, let's take a look here at the strong verb Hifil perfect. So I'm using katal as our paradigm, and one of the things you can see here is that we have a he prefix followed by a hirik vowel in the perfect in every form. He hirik prefix in every form of the perfect. And you have the endings of the perfect, those atatati utentenu endings that we've learned. So you have the endings of the perfect. That's how you know it's a perfect. How do you know it's a Hifil perfect? You see that he hirik prefix on the front. If you just embrace those two things, you should be able to translate or parse any Hifil stem verb. Let me just go ahead and read these. Beginning in the third masculine singular, we have hiktil, hiktila, hiktalta, hiktalt, hiktalti, hiktilu, hiktaltem, hiktalten, hiktalnu. And you translate it with the meaning of that verb in the Hifil stem as a completed action, typically as a past tense. Okay, let's take a look at the Hifil imperfect strong verb using yiktol. Now you know the yiktol poem, so you've memorized that. You can apply that to the Hifil stem. It's the same signal letters, the same prefixes and suffixes as the kal stem or the pa'al stem. So what are we looking here for to indicate it's a Hifil? The main thing you want to look at is that short a, the patak vowel under the signal letter or under the prefix of the Hifil. So that in the kal stem or the pa'al, it's a hirik, right? Hirik followed by a silent shava. In the Hifil, it's a patak, an a followed by a silent shava. And then typically there's a hirik yod, or sometimes just a hirik, or sometimes a tzere, theme vowel or second vowel. Let me just read through this. We have yaktil, taktil, taktil, taktili, aktil, yaktilu, taktilna, taktilu, taktilna, naktil. All right, as we go to the imperative, just like with every form so far, the way you form the imperative is you chop off the prefix of the imperfect. And then that is essentially the form of the imperative. And that's true with the Hifil as well, except the difference is, remember how I said that he prefix was hiding under the signal letter of the imperfect? If we go back to the imperfect form, you can look at a second person imperfect, like a 2ms. See, it's taktil. There is a he hiding underneath that signal letter. And so when you chop that prefix off, that he shows back up. That's essentially what you have in the imperative conjugation. So it's haktel, haktili, haktilu, haktelna. So that is the imperative form. Again, just translated with the meaning of that verb in the Hifil and then translated as an imperative. The regular infinitive, or the infinitive construct, you can see that form there on the left-hand side, is haktil. It's very, very similar to a 2ms imperative. Typically, we'll have a prepositional prefix. And then the infinitive of emphasis, or the infinitive absolute on the right-hand side there, is haktel. Very slight difference between those two forms. Context is going to be your best help in differentiating between them. And of course, the infinitive of emphasis, or the infinitive absolute, cannot take a prepositional prefix. The participle. You can see the cow stem participle on the left-hand side there. The endings of the participle are the same in every conjugation, so it's the same endings as nouns have. That's true in the Hifil participle as well. So how do you recognize the Hifil participle? Well, it's got a main prefix followed by a short a, or patak vowel. And then there's a hirik yod, or an I-class vowel, in the middle. Now, think about how this is different than a PL participle. The PL participle under the main will have a vocal shava. Hifil, it's an A, patak vowel. So we have maktil, maktelet, maktilim, maktilot. And you translate it just like you do a regular participle with the meaning of that verb in the Hifil stem. And it can be used just like every participle can, predicatively, substantively, or attributively. Now, there are some easily confused forms, and I want to end with this because it does get a little confusing. First guttural roots. Roots that the first root consonant is a he, chet, ayin, or aleph. A lot of times, even in the cow stem, gutturals prefer A-class vowels. And so even in the cow stem, under the influence of the guttural, that initial vowel, which is normally a hirik or an I vowel in the cow stem, will change to a patak, whereas in the Hifil, it is a patak. And that's one of those places that can be kind of confusing. So you want to look at that theme vowel, if it's a holum versus the hirik, is how you tell the difference there. But that is our discussion of the Hifil stem.